everyone. I hope you're enjoying the conference so far. So I'm Ruth. As Nathaniel said, I'm a software engineer at Puppet Labs. I've been working at Puppet for a little bit over 2 years, and for all but 1 week of that time, I've been working on Puppet Enterprise, and specifically on the console. I have no background as a sysadmin. When I started at Puppet, I barely understood what it did, and so I've actually learned a lot about how Puppet works from working on the console, and from seeing how the console integrates and works with Puppet. So that's what I want to talk to you today. I want to talk to you about how the Puppet Enterprise console can help you to understand Puppet better, and also how it can help you understand your Puppet infrastructure, what is going on your nodes. So let's take a moment and talk about how Puppet works. What happens during a Puppet run? So we have a node. It's going to wake up, and it gathers facts. It gathers information about its system, and it submits those facts while it makes a request for a catalog from the master. In that request, it, sorry, notes here. In that request, it's going to say, submit those facts, say, okay, how should I be configured? And the Puppet master will then go and compile a catalog of how that node should be configured and submit it back to the node. And then the node will apply those changes that that catalog had and submit a report back to the master. So some new things in the console that I'm really excited to get to talk about. Those include things that were demoed yesterday in Luke's keynote, including node classification and fine-grained access control, as well as the ability to integrate an external directory server. So I wanted to go through this talk and kind of illustrate how does the console integrate with all of those different steps of a Puppet run. And I also wanted to demo how a directory server gets integrated. So I thought, okay, I will set up a node with a directory server and use that as my demonstration of how I set that up and show you how the console illustrates what's going on underneath with Puppet for all of those steps. So this is what I see when I bring up the console for the first time. As you can see, I have a master, cleverly named PE master. And you can see that this master has run a couple times. This is what this graph is showing you. It had a first run where it had some changes. That's the blue. And since then, it has been running without changes. So that's great. That seems good. But I want to set up this directory server, and since it's for demo purposes, I'm probably going to mess some stuff up, and I'm going to break some stuff, and so I don't really want that to be done on my master. So I need an agent. So we're going to go back to this diagram, which I stole from the sales engineering slide deck. I think it's a great diagram, but apparently I thought it used to be on our website, and I couldn't find it anymore. So thanks to the sales engineers who are here for this. But one thing this doesn't have is the fact that I need an agent. So if I want to run Puppet, I'm going to have to install an agent on my node. So when I look at the Puppet Enterprise console, it has this header, and it says no node requests. And if I click on it, I get this little informational screen about the fact that I have no pending node requests, and how do I add an agent to my Puppet infrastructure? How do I get Puppet Enterprise to manage my node? So I have this command here, and I will use that and run this on my agent. This is the agent install. And so it basically goes out, it downloads some packages, it downloads the agent package as well as all of the other packages that it needs to run, and then it starts the Puppet service. So with that, I should have an agent up and running. We're going to take a little digression here and talk about certificates. Certificates are a lot of fun, by which I mean they're really complicated. So as you probably already know, Puppet uses HTTPS using SSL to communicate between the agent and the master. This is a great diagram, I believe, that Nick Fagerland created. It's up on the Puppet Labs website. It's all of the communications between an agent and a master. As you can see, it's really long. And it's a little bit more in-depth than I really want to go into and have the time to go into. But it's a really informative diagram. The link is on the bottom there. But the entire top part of this is all about how does the agent get a certificate? How is it able to actually talk to the master? Has all of these steps, it's very complicated. But all that we really care about is that at the end of this, at the end of the agent install that you run, the agent has made a certificate signing request. And so if I go and refresh that nodes page, that request page in the Puppet Enterprise console, I now see that I have a pending node request for my agent. And you can also see up in the corner, it has one node request. So if you're on another page, it'll show up, notify you. So in this request manager, you can go and decide whether you want to accept or reject this node. That is, sign or delete this CSR, thereby allowing or denying your node to join your Puppet Enterprise system. So I'm going to accept this. I want my PE LDAP node to join my Puppet Enterprise infrastructure. And once I do that, the master becomes aware of it. And if I refresh the page, you'll also see in the top that I have a new license in this license status. The number is increased. This little popover basically just tells you how many licenses of Puppet Enterprise do you have, how many of them have you used, and when do they expire. It never phones home. It never lets us know, hey, you've used thousands of licenses more than you actually have. But it's just a little notification to you of how many active nodes you have, how many active licenses. All right, so I've got my node. Now, and my node is also able to talk to the master. So now it's going to wake up. It's going to run and collect all of the facts about its state. This is a huge amount of information about it, and it'll send that to the master. So what do these facts look like? I guess I forgot to mention, the reason I'm doing screenshots rather than actually demoing anything is that I was never able to get Keynote, Vagrant, my browser, everything else to all work at the same time, which is why you get screenshots. Screenshots have the downside that they don't scroll very well. If you were to go and look at a nodes page, you would scroll down to the bottom and see this inventory. And this is a long list of all of the facts from the agent's last run. So this is what it submitted to the master when it requested its catalog. And it's a great way to just to kind of be able to skim and see, oh, hey, OK, this is all of the stuff that's on this node. So now that the agent has submitted facts to the master and requested its catalog, the master has to compile a catalog and send it back. It compiles the catalog based off of the facts that the node sends to it. That's cool. But how does the master know how the node should be configured? How does it know what classes to give to it? So this is another awesome slide that I took from the Puppet Labs docs site. And I like it because it shows in a little bit more depth what goes on after the agent requests a catalog. And it's really, the master has to figure out, who is this? Who is this node? And what do they need? And that's the classification process. So based on the facts that the agent submitted, what should Puppet do? How should it be configured? There's a lot of different ways that you can do classification. If you have ever used the existing Puppet Enterprise console, you'll know that it has what we call the external node classifier, an ENC. There's other different ways that you can plug in classification. This is all based off of the node terminus. A node terminus is basically a plugin that knows how to get node information. So this is a screenshot of my Puppet master's puppet.conf. And you can see here that I've specified node terminus classifier. And this is how the Puppet master is going to know to talk to the new classifier service that we've been working on. And so it'll know how to contact that service to get the node information it needs around classes, parameters, environments. So again, this was demoed some yesterday during Luke's keynote, and you might have also gone to other demos. But I think it's really awesome. We've been working on it for a while. I think it's really exciting. Again, especially if you have used Puppet Enterprise currently or previously, you know that the node classification in it is not the most enjoyable to use. It involves a lot of clicking. It's not terribly intuitive. You can't really automate it unless you want to use rake, which, yeah. So again, my whole point here is I want to set up a directory service. So I'm going to create a directory servers group here. And then I'm going to apply some rules to it. I'm going to say, rather than picking and choosing nodes individually that I want to put into my group, I'm going to create rules about what nodes should go in. And I'm going to create a pretty simple rule. I'm going to do it based off of the cert name, the node name. So if you look in the drop-down, you'll see I kind of have type ahead here. I start to type in the name. I get to choose what type of name I want to use. And then I'm going to make a rule that it is going to match a regular expression. And as I start to type this, I'm going to, you'll see I've just done, dot splat. So it matches all of my nodes. In this case, I only have 2 nodes, so it's matching everything. As I continue typing it, I'm going to say, I want this group to match all of my LDAP servers. So anything that has LDAP in the name. And now I only have 1 node matching. I can go over and see in the Matching Nodes tab what nodes does this group match. If I were to bring up another node that was PLDAP2, I wouldn't have to do anything else. It would just automatically get this classification. I don't have to go and click and add another node anywhere to a group. So it's all rules-based. So then I'm going to add my class. In this case, I just have an LDAP demo class that I've got set up. And again, you see this is aware of the classes that I have on my Puppet master. So what does this module look like? It's pretty simple. I've got a package, I've got a service, and I have a file. That's all I need to set up my LDAP demo server. The service requires the package, and the file requires the package in order to create the directories for it. And also, it's going to notify the service. So anytime that the file changes, the service will get refreshed. And I have 3 class parameters here. And I have a template that the file resource uses for its content. So if I go back to this UI, this classification tab, I can now put in parameters that I want to specify for this class. And again, it's aware of what these parameters are from my class. I'm going to pick the host parameter, and it will fill in the default that was in my module. And in this case, I want to override this default. I don't want my server just listening on localhost. I want it listening on all interfaces so that I can actually connect to it from my browser. And so this is basically the classification that I've given for this group. And this is one group, and a node can have multiple groups. We can go and look at the nodes page again and see this is what the classification would look like. This is the predictive classification. This is all of the groups that this node should get. And I say predictive because this all happens based on facts. So it's the facts that the agent supplies when it runs. And those facts might change from run to run. And all that we're aware of right now is the last facts. So this is the classification that this node would have based on the last facts it submitted. There are potentially times when it might change, especially if you have classified based off of a fact that changes a lot. But it's a good way of understanding, okay, I have this, in this case, this directory servers group that is bringing in this LDAP demo class. But I also, this node matches rules for the PEM collective group. And so it has the PEM collective role agent class. And you can also see here, again, a graph of its reports. It's what has happened when it's run, what the status has been. So that's this third step in this diagram. After the node applies the catalog that the master sent it, it's going to send back to the master all of the changes that it made, which is the report. So that bottom blue on this slide was a report that had changes. And in this case, it was the report that had all of the classes, all of the resources needed for mcollective to be set up on my agent. So we're going to take another slight digression and talk about mcollective. But here from this report, you can see these are all of the resources that got changed and that mcollective relies on to be set up on my agent. So if you aren't aware, mcollective is an orchestration tool. It allows you to send out commands to your nodes. And now that it's set up, I can go to live management. And live management is a UI built on top of mcollective. And it allows you to inspect the state of your nodes right now, as well as to execute actions on them. So after Puppet ran and applied that mcollective class that set up everything, I now have my agent showing up in live management. And I can take a look, for example, at all of the packages on its system. And this is just the packages not only that, that Puppet manages, but all packages that it has right now. So this is updated less than a minute ago when I took the screenshot. I can also run Puppet from live management. So if I go into control Puppet, run once, I have this list of options. And I don't have to specify any of these options. I can just hit run, and it'll do a Puppet run on my agent. But in this case, I want to actually do a simulation run. I want to see what's going to happen when I have my LDAP demo class applied. Is everything going to blow up, or is it going to be OK? So I'm going to put in noop true and run it. And this is what the command that it's running on the agent looks like. And so then I'm going to go back to the main page of my console and refresh it and see what happens. And unfortunately, things did not go as planned. I've got a nice big red blob here. Red is failed. Something did not go right. So what? I can click on that report. I can look at the log output. So there's a bunch of different parts of a report, including logs, metrics, events. In this case, I look at the log output, and it shows that I have a catalog compilation error, in particular on line 22 of my manifest. OK, cool. I can fix that. I have a file and a line number. That's nice. But before I go back and fix that, I'm going to look at this events. I have no events. What is happening here is, if you look at this log again, the catalog couldn't compile. It has syntax error somewhere. So the master was never actually able to compile a catalog. So it couldn't send anything to the agent to run. So no changes could happen. So no events happened. Events are changes to resources. So that's why I have no events here. And then if I go and look at Event Inspector, which is this Events tab, Event Inspector shows you events going on your nodes and resources. It gives you the ability to look based off of resource or class at different types of events that have happened recently. But again, because I had no events in my report, nothing shows up here. So I have this failure, but I don't see anything here. And I think that's something that I occasionally have happen. I'm like, I have red in my console. I should be seeing something in Event Inspector. Oh, no, my catalog didn't compile, so therefore there's no events in my report. So this fourth step in this diagram is the master just kind of gets the report, but it doesn't necessarily do anything with it. The way that the console becomes aware of it is that it's submitted to a report processor, which is a tool that kind of takes that report and does something with it. In the case of Puppet Enterprise, we by default have 2 report processors. Again, this is a screenshot of my puppet.conf file for my master, and you'll see I have a console report processor and a PuppetDB report processor. And so the console report processor takes the report and just dumps it into the console's database. And the PuppetDB report processor sends the report to PuppetDB. PuppetDB actually doesn't hold on to all of those log messages. Those turn out to be a lot of data. And so PuppetDB doesn't hold on to those. It only knows about the reports and report messages and events. So for the console, you have that main page, all of those colors are pulling from this console report processor that goes into the console's database, whereas Event Inspector queries PuppetDB. And so that's why Event Inspector has no awareness of log messages like what we had in that last report. It only knows about events. All right, so I'm going to go back to my module and fix this error, which I had a typo. I am missing an O. So I fix it. That's great. I'm going to run Puppet in no-op mode again and see, OK, hopefully this time I get the changes simulated that I expected. And I do. It looks good. I see 3 no-op events happened on my node. 1 for my service, 1 for my file, and 1 for my package. That looks great. By simulating it, I'm a little bit more confident that I am not going to totally break everything. This looks like what I expect to happen is going to happen. So let's do it for real. This time I'm going to run Puppet from Live Management on my agent, but without no-op. And then I'll go and look at Event Inspector again. Uh-oh. Something bad happened again. But everything looked good when I ran it in no-op. What happened? Like, no-op told me that when I simulated the changes, it said, hey, that's fine, that's great. Yet I have a failure here. So what gives? If I go and click on this package failure, I can see this message here. And so this is a message on an event. And it tells me that I was missing a dependent package. My LDAP demo package actually requires I need Java to be installed, and I don't have Java installed. And so it failed to install. But in addition to that, if you look on the left side, you can see that it has a couple of skip events. And so both my service and my file had skip events. And that was because they depended on my package. And since my package had a failure, well, when applying this catalog, Puppet isn't going to do anything. It's going to skip over these other 2 events. So not only does Event Inspector, in this case, help me to see what's going on underneath in my Puppet infrastructure, what's happening on my nodes, it helped me understand the relationship between my nodes here, or between my resources here. What's going on with Puppet? How does Puppet work? All right, so I went and installed Java. That was boring. Not going to show you that. Then I ran Puppet again and looked at Event Inspector. That's much better. I've got 3 change events. It's what I expected. Each of these is now been created. Everything should be running. And I can go and use Live Management, and I can, again, query the state of my system right now. And so I look for an LDAP demo package, and it shows up on my p-LDAP node. Yay. Hooray. It's all working, so we're done. We can go home, right? Like, I got Puppet to run. I have submitted my fax, got a catalog. That catalog was finally successfully able to apply the changes I want. I saw that from the report that got submitted back. That's awesome. That's not all I wanted to show, though. The entire, my point for setting up a directory server was being able to show you some of the new cool stuff that we've been working on around finer-grained access control in the console. and also being able to connect a directory server. So if I go to the access control tab, I can see this external directory page, and I have a bunch of options to fill in. And so I fill all of those in, and then I can go and test changes and see, was the console actually able to connect to my directory server and make a successful connection? And it was. Hooray. So this is what all of the settings look like. Lots of stuff to put in. Fun. Yay. All right, so now what? I've got a directory service. Well, now I think that my talk needs more cats. This is where my demo gets a little silly. I was, getting tired of creating slides late at night and creating real-world scenarios. So now we're going to get some cats. So turns out this is what my directory service looks like. I have my LDAP demo, and I have a group of cats, and I have a group of dogs. I have a lot of cats, and they all already have accounts in this directory service. So I don't want to have to create new accounts for all of my cats in the console, which is why I want to be able to connect my directory service to this access control that the console has. I know it's probably a bad idea to give cats access to the console, but oh well, let's have some fun. And I said cats, not dogs. I have these dogs in my directory service, but I don't want to give them access to the console. So the next thing I'm going to do is go into user groups, and I'm going to add all of the groups that are present in my directory service that I want the console to be aware of. So I go and I just add the cats login, and it'll show up. And it knows what the source of this directory service is. It's from my LDAP demo directory service. And so this will allow any of those users in the cats group to log in to get any of the permissions that I give to this group. So that's what I need here. Once I look at that cats group, it says I have no roles. So rather than applying permissions directly to users, we use roles to kind of aggregate permissions so that you can come up with positions that make sense, roles that make sense, and things that you might want someone to do that make sense as a way of grouping permissions together. So if I look, we have some default roles. One of them is the viewers. And here you can see what permissions look like. So my role has permissions, and then I apply the role to my group, and so that, or to a user, and so my user or group gets permissions through roles. Permissions have three parts. They have a type, they have a permission or an action, and they have an object. And in this case, the viewer's role has permission on every single type of object here. So node groups, users, console pages, which is kind of a way of integrating this with the existing console that we already had, and user roles. And this viewer's role has the ability to view all of these things, and not only to view all of these types, but view all of the objects within each of these types. So that's cool. But I want to create a new role. I want to create a role that's going to have permissions only on my node group, my directory server's node group. So I go and add a new role. And then I go over and add permissions to this role. And in this case, I'm only adding permissions that are for node groups. And I'm going to add the view permission and an edit classification permission. And I'm going to do these both just on the directory services group. So I have the ability to choose, do I want to apply this permission to all of the groups or just to one of them? And in this case, I am, again, using cats, and I don't want to, for example, give the cats the ability to edit my master, because that would probably be a terrible idea. My directory server group, in this case, just has an example node that I don't care a ton about. I've already, done some harm to it. So I'm going to add my group to my newly created role. And then if I go and look at my group, my cats group, I can see I have 2 roles on it. I have the viewers, which I gave to it, and then also this new directory server manager's role. So based off of the permissions of those 2 roles, all of the members of this group will have the ability to view everything, but only to edit the classification for that directory servers group. Nothing else. So now I'm going to sign in as a directory service user. In this case, I'm going to sign in as the Cheshire Cat. And when I sign in as this user, it appears in the users page. And it gets a last login, and also you can see the source of the user. In this case, it's from my LDAP demo. And I show you the source because you can also create local users, and that's just as a source of the Puppet Enterprise. So I want to test out these permissions, these roles that I just gave to my cat user. So I'm going to go and I'm going to try to edit something on my PE Masters group. I tried to change the message of the day to "Beware the Jabberwock, my son," but I'm not allowed to do that. That's good. That's what I expected. Perhaps the Cheshire Cat user is not quite so happy about this, but as the admin, I am glad. I don't want my cat user messing with my master. But then I go over to my directory servers, and I can edit this. The Cheshire Cat, is able to set the message of the day to "Beware the Jabberwock, my son." So that's kind of a little bit more of a clue into how the fine-grained access control that's going to be coming soon to the console works. I should note, I really wanted to set the message of the day to cat emoji, but it turns out that cat emoji are currently broken in the development build that I'm using of the console, which made me really sad. So, oh well. So, all right. That's kind of, I've gone through most of my demo of what I wanted to show and of how the Puppet Enterprise console works and what it shows you for all steps of an agent run. The console integrates with a lot of different parts of Puppet. I talked some about how it gets facts, how it gets node, or how it gets reports, how it you have a node terminus that's how to talk to the classifier service, how it talks to PuppetDB, Event Inspector talks to PuppetDB, all of these different parts. It's a complicated system. It's a lot of things that are going on, which means that stuff can break, unfortunately. And so there's a couple of places that you can look if it seems like, wow, I got an error message, like what happened here? Something just blew up in my face. Hopefully that doesn't happen too often, but there are places that you can look if that does happen. These are kind of the 3 best places to check for stuff that has gone wrong or why something went wrong. There's a PE Puppet dashboard directory with a bunch of different logs in there. There's the Apache error.log, which will have any major errors that didn't get caught by something else. And then there's in 3.4, in the next Puppet Enterprise, we'll have a new PE console services log and directory. We're using some new technology for this stuff, and it's really cool, but it also means that it'll probably break in new and unexpected ways from what we're used to. And so this is where to check for other error messages. Other thing I just want to say is the Puppet Lab support team is awesome. I work with them as an engineer occasionally on support tickets when they have kind of exhausted all of their other resources and have no clue what's going on. And they always amaze me with how dedicated they are to figuring out what's going on in a customer's system. There are times when I, as an engineer, I'm like, I have no idea. Like, this is way, this is something totally weird that I've never seen. And they will go and spend time digging in with our customers. So just kind of a shout out to them for being awesome. That's about all I've got. Any questions? Yeah.
I saw the activity section of the variant. I'm assuming that's activity users are doing errors. My question is, how long does that take to run?
So the reason that I didn't show you any of that is that we're still developing that part. So yeah, as you said, we'll have kind of both when you look at a node group and when you look at a user, you'll be able to see activity that is what changed, anything that changed state for that. So if you change the classes, if you changed what roles are associated with a user group, a lot of things like that. I don't know off the top of my head if there will be a time limit or what that will be. I think there's going to be, no, I actually don't know off the top of my head. I think that might be also changing a little bit, but yeah. Lindsay?
If I recall correctly, it's a light amount of data and we'll just leave it there. It'll be like a proving step.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, yeah, I know that there will be a pruning kind of task that you can run, but it is supposed to be kind of, unlike, yeah, say PuppetDB or the console reports database that just holds tons and tons of information. It's not going to be nearly that much. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It will be, but that's, as Nathaniel said, we're on the same team. It's what we've been working on the past week or so. So yeah, we're actively working at Nathaniel is sitting over there working on that. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
For the access control section, is there an interval or a time period when it goes and syncs with the backend LDAP?
So we're not. So there's a connection timeout. It has a connection timeout of, I think, by default 10 seconds. Maybe not by default, but for the one that I was using, it was 10 seconds. We're not syncing with the directory service, so we're not staying up to date with, something changed underneath. You changed groups or you moved stuff around. We sync whenever a new user logs in. We get more information about your group or your users, but we never, some systems like Jira, for example, you can go and you can like change your LDAP password in Jira, or you can, have the changes that you make in Jira reflect in your LDAP server. We're not doing that. That's, I think from our point of view, a little scary and a lot to manage, so we're not kind of syncing back with it.
So, well, I guess it's not so much that, I guess like if I add a new user in the Active Directory or LDAP, how often will
it?
Console go and say, oh, there's a new user?
So what'll happen is that a new user will show up when they try to log in. So if they logged in and the authentication was successful, and so it's when whenever an authentication attempt happens, it'll go and sync with the LDAP server again. Yeah.
So it doesn't maintain a store?
No, it just has the things that it has been aware of after a user has logged in. It kind of maintains a store of that. Yeah. Yeah. I think it depends on how I'm installing the package. In this case, I was just pointing it at a package I had on disk and having it install that. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so if I could figure out how to go all the way back, which I'm not going to be able to easily, yeah, I had package provider RPM, and exactly as Chris was saying, has that behavior. Yeah. Other questions? No? All right. Thanks so much, and enjoy the last session.